Charles, Rep. Omar out of Minnesota, a U.S. Congresswoman, is now coming under sincere fire and some attacks about a speech she gave in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, to a group of Somalian citizens who are now American citizens who live in Minnesota. Matter of fact, Minnesota is perhaps the largest Somalian refugee of Americans who came, refugees who came from Somalia to America. They live in Minnesota, the largest number of them. She said some things that was disturbing to a lot of Americans. She indicated that she's first Somalian in Congress before she's a U.S. Congresswoman. And she pledged allegiance to a great degree to Somalia's interests over American interests. That's the way it's being interpreted. And in fact, it's being interpreted as though she says, I am Somalian first, then Muslim. And no Muslim in their right mind, male or female, would say something so idiotic as that. But she's also come back and said that the translation and the interpretation of her words were taken out of context, and she did not say those things. But now you see some Somalian leaders who are criticizing her even further. It's nothing wrong with loving your homeland. You should do that. Many Jewish men and women who live in America still pledge love and allegiance to Israel. Nothing wrong with that. But when you start saying that you're going to put your homeland from another country first in the United States Congress, then it becomes very threatening to those who love this nation. But I believe that she should be allowed to love her homeland. She should not be quoted out of context, but I pray she come forth before the American people and clarify everything that was said in that room.
You know, Ilhan Omar is an interesting figure in the American political landscape, right? You're exactly right that the federal government decided to plant an outsized number of Somalian immigrants in Minneapolis, Minnesota, changing the demographics of that city tremendously, but also shifting the political tide in that city, and almost seems intentional, right? Ilhan Omar has been dogged by very curious allegations throughout the most of her career. What was written off almost immediately as a right-wing conspiracy theorist was the allegations that many years ago, in engaging in some type of student grant education fraud, that she had a sham marriage to a sibling, right? And it turns out that those allegations were initially made by members of the Somali community there in Minneapolis, and that there was an investigation by the Star Tribune, but it was largely absolutely ignored by the mainstream media, because the thought is you can't criticize a Democrat politician, especially one who is a woman of color and an immigrant. But she has incredibly shady past, right? So if you just believe her history, it was married, divorced, married in her community and her faith, divorced, married to this guy who may or may not have been her brother, then had another kid with the original husband, which does suggest it looks like there was at least some type of immigration fraud going on, and then left the husband to get married to a white male consultant that was somehow involved in her campaign and may have been benefiting financially from it. All of that almost universally ignored by the mainstream media, because of course we have this incredible bias, right? And she has a long history of saying horrifyingly anti-Semitic comments. But what struck me as odd, though, is you said no Muslim would ever say their country first and their faith second, being their homeland country. What did you mean by that?
No, what she said, she says that I'm Somalian first, then Muslim. She went on, she said, we are Somalian first, then Muslim.
Okay.
And that's tribalism in Islam. In Islam, Muslim is your nature. Muslim is the very nature in which you're created. Muslim means one who submits his or her will to do the will of God. So when you put a nationality and a tribe before the word Muslim, it's a blatant contradiction to what the Prophet Muhammad taught us and the Quran.
Okay.
So no Muslim would talk like that.
Okay, but in fact, there are millions of Muslims that talk like that. In fact, most of the violence in the Islamist world is directed at different sects of the Muslim faith. And then, of course, in the Middle East is
tribalism in the name of the religion, which is
but
forbidden.
You have tons of Muslim people that engage in violent tribalism in the world right now.
But that same thing happened right in America for generations.
The heart. Hey,
you had white Christians do the same thing.
I am absolutely.
The Mormons would kill those who they felt were in direct contradiction to their faith as Christians.
Right. We had a world racked with violence for millennia, right? And there's been a steep rise in the last couple of centuries of of the Western world rejecting this type of religious-based infighting, whereas in the Muslim world,
there's been a steep rise of the Western world creating tensions among tribes, creating tensions among Muslim groups and Muslim sects to fight each other. The same way it happened right here in America with the Indians.
So one, you interrupted me with two. So let me understand your argument now. Your argument now is that it's America's fault that there's so much violence in the Islamist region.
Well, former CIA operatives have admitted that's exactly what the American government has done.
Again, you're interrupting me, and it's not the Islamist extremists who have been engaging in violence throughout the West. You know, we talked about earlier this week about 65% of the terror in America over the last 3 decades was radicalized Islamists, right? And of course, you say, oh, no, it's whitey. And you look at all the terror that has rained down across what was once very peaceful parts of Europe, right? Sweden, now one of the most dangerous places, racked with violence. It's all tied to Islamist extremism. We saw Charlie Hebdo, the satire magazine, that all the staff was killed with rocket launch attacks.
But those same attacks were happening before Muslims started.
Because they,
it was something called the IRA, and the Irish Republican Army was killing people all over Europe.
Yeah, that's actually not true.
That's true.
That was in
the IRA was killing other Irishmen and women all over Europe.
I don't disagree.
They were fighting for independence.
But you want to pretend that the Islamist world's extremism isn't it's not the Islamists and the tribalism, it's not their fault, it's just you being full of crap, right?
No, it's not Muslims. It's not Muslims doing that.
That's right.
It's criminals who have tried to hijack the religion and hide behind the religion.
It's the religion of peace. You're right.
Absolutely it is.
I'm so sorry.
It's criminals committing criminal acts and trying to hide behind the religion.
Here's the thing, right? Here's my problem. Are you still interrupting? I know you love to talk about 200 years ago instead of today.
No, right now.
But
James Byrd Jr. in Jasper, Texas.
Whatever you
no
are
white boys
ready,
claim to be Christians.
Whatever you're ready.
Dylan Roof in South Carolina, he claimed to be Christian. And in fact, went into church with a Bible and killed all of them.
Right, and got a horrible action, and he's been sentenced to death, and I hope he lives the eternity in hell.
And the Klan, they wear a cross.
Right, but it does seem like you only care about mass shootings when a white person does it, but I find all mass shootings repugnant, and what I find repugnant about Ilhan Omar, I find repugnant about a great number of people on the other side of the aisle, right, which I would think you would too, right? My problem is with theocracy, right? My problem is the intrusion and people placing their religious beliefs over their obligation to this country when they're serving in Washington, D.C. or Austin or any state house in this country, right? I don't care if it's Muslim. I don't care if it's Christian. I don't care if it's Jewish. I don't care if it's Hindi. I don't care what it is, right? I think that if you take an oath to swear to support America, right, and to work for the people of America, that's who your oath should be. And it's very clear that Ilhan Omar believes that her oaths lie with Somalia and her faith, and that's absolutely inappropriate, right? She shouldn't be in Congress.
Faith.
And
she indicated her faith was secondary.
Right, well, right. And then
not a priority.
Right, well, no. First Somalia, second Muslim.
No, so she didn't say that.
We don't. Yes, she did.
No,
and we don't even know where America is.
She said we are Somalians before we're Muslim because many Somalians think we're Muslim first.
For decades, right, the Republican Party kept their stranglehold on power by leaning on theocracy, right, by leaning on Christian values, which they really didn't care about, right? What they wanted to do is facilitate it for power. Right, and this is very same to Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar doesn't give a damn, right, about America. She wants to use her power in America to benefit just Somalis, and after Somalis, just Muslims. And that's not the way. That's not the way this country is supposed to be.
Based on everything I've seen from Rep. Omar.
I know you loved all the anti-Semitism.
No, let me say this.
I know you love that.
Based on what I've seen from Rep. Omar, she says some truthful things in her critique and criticism of Israel. Everything she said was not on point. But from what I've seen, Charles, from her, I think she's really not a practicing Muslim. I think she's more of a nationalist for Somalia and who was born Muslim. But when you look at the behavior, the activity, the actions, it does not indicate someone who puts Islam first.
So do you think that people that put their Muslim faith, that Muslims that are elected to office should put their faith ahead of their obligation to this country and their oath to this country?
No, I believe that Muslims should always maintain the nature in which God created us. And we shouldn't do anything in the name of government that contradicts our faith and our belief. The United States Supreme Court agreed with that also when they voted on Muhammad Ali and his right to not go to the Vietnam
I'm not
War.
talking about.
But I do not believe
citizens.
that Muslims
I'm asking you
should
about
pledge allegiance to a
elected
flag
officials.
or to a government.
Ever?
We pledge allegiance to God. We don't pledge allegiance
So yes,
to a
you
flag.
do. So yes, you think that elected officials who are Muslim their allegiance should be to their faith ahead of their country.
To God first.
Okay, and
To God first.
I absolutely
and
disagree.
let me say this to you.
Right, so you support Sharia law.
America will go no. America will
Well, how
go
do you
straight
not?
to hell if America does not go back to putting God first.
Okay, which God?
The same God of Christians or the same God of Muslims?
Okay, but they're not.
The same God of Jews or the same God of Muslims
But they're
and
not,
Christians.
right?
You're wrong.
Well, I know you
All
I
three
know you love
religions-
that lie.
all three religions
because this
claim
is
Abraham
the new inclusive
as his
lie.
father.
But the truth is, they're not.
There's
in fact,
one
if
God,
you read,
Charles.
if you read the New Testament, right, the New Testament is very clear that you have to accept Jesus as the Son of Christ and that the Holy Trinity, and if not, that you won't be welcome into the kingdom of heaven.
All Christians don't believe that.
I got you.
All Christians
when you
do
talk
not
about
believe
God,
that. In
so
fact,
what-
the Catholic Church didn't believe it until the late 1900s.
So if we're rewriting the codes, the legislative, the criminal codes, the civil codes, all the codes in America, both federal and state, right? And if you said we got to put God first, so we should look to the Quran and we should decide what they say is bad and whatever sect you think is right, and we should just be Iran or Saudi Arabia.
When you look at the commandments of the Bible.
Okay, well, no, let's not talk about the Bible.
me
You're
finish.
Muslim. Let's talk about
Let me
Muslim.
finish. When you look at the commandments of the Bible,
I love it.
they're
I love how you
identical
will-
to the law of Islam.
well,
when you look at the law of
goodness.
Judaism, they
So-
are identical
so
to
you
the law of
think
Islam.
women should have
What
to
I
have their
think-
heads
what I
covered when they
think
leave
that
the
we
house?
should do.
You think women should
No.
have to have their heads covered when they
No,
leave the
that's
house?
a woman's choice.
Okay.
But I do believe this.
You think you should be able to have a dozen wives?
No, hell no. Because
Well,
most
I
men
mean-
can't have the one that they got.
Okay.
But it's a problem,
you
Charles.
don't want to,
Charles,
you don't want
no.
to put God first,
What I
except
want
when you're talking
no,
into
what
a
I
camera.
want, I want to put God back into the very foundation of this nation. What we have done, we've abandoned the godly principles. It's not the religion, but the principles that undergird all the religions that should come back into American practice. For the principles in Islam are identical to the principles of Judaism and Christianity.
Absolutely not.
it is.
Absolutely. I
But
know
it is
you
the
love that
principles
lie,
of those
but
holy
you
books
are
that need to come back to the foundation of
through
America.
your teeth. There are huge differences.
No, it's
and
not.
You only
look
want
at the
to
Ten
sell it.
Commandments,
Okay.
and then look at the received law of Islam.
So how do you think we should change American society because of your religious text?
One, get rid of alcohol.
Okay.
Alcohol does no good for America.
But people, you don't
hold
think we
on.
should have the individual liberty
Get
to
rid of
drink?
alcohol. You said Islam.
Okay,
According to
go
Islam,
ahead.
get rid of alcohol.
Okay.
Give everybody free health care. Because
Okay.
in Islam, that's what we're supposed to do.
Okay.
Give everybody free education. For Islam, that's what we're supposed to do.
Okay.
Also, get rid of interest. Because in Islam, you can't charge interest on a loan to a fellow Muslim. So all of these lending institutions of America would no longer would only be allowed to charge these long, short interest rates on American citizens. Get rid of that. See, those are principles that I'm talking about right now that I think even Christians would agree with.
Okay, so should we make the doctors and teachers work for free?
No.
Okay, well, you said we're not going to charge anybody anything.
No.
Should people pay more taxes?
No. We pay the doctors and lawyers the same way we give corporate
Wait, how
welfare to nations like Ukraine. We pay the doctors and lawyers by making Americans first again.
Okay.
We pay the doctors and lawyers decent salaries, but also we pay
I
teachers.
thought we were talking about doctors and university professors. But
And
I don't
teachers.
Know, I don't know how lawyers got into this. But
Lawyers too. Let me tell you why.
So no alcohol.
We got to pay lawyers who are court appointed a lot more than what they make to better represent indigent poor people who need qualified representation. And the government should subsidize that payment and not by the crumbs they give in now.
I don't know if you've read the articles about the ones making hundreds of $1,000s a year here in Harris County
wait a
by
minute.
jobbing the
Yeah,
system.
but they got 3,000 clients in one year.
Yeah, no,
they
it's
got
crazy.
3,000 clients in one
But
year.
hold on.
That's a damn sham.
Let's go back. Okay, so alcohol illegal. You also think marijuana should be illegal in the states that legalized it?
Only for medicinal medical purposes.
Okay. So, well, is not being happy, is that a medicinal medicine?
No, that's not.
Okay.
That's a personal issue.
So you don't believe in individual liberty? And you think we
yes,
should,
I do believe in it.
So you pro like authoritarian state like China?
No, I disagree with that too.
Okay, well,
forced child labor and things like that,
you think
and
that
don't pay people a living wage.
You think
China's
people
wrong
that
for that.
drink alcohol should go to prison?
No, I think we should just stop selling alcohol.
Okay, but people will just make it and sell it. They'll be moonshiners.
And then guess what? You're breaking the law.
Okay, they should go to prison.
The same way Eric Garner, who was selling loose cigarettes on the corner, that's against law. They killed him for doing it.
The Eric Garner situation is insane, right? He's
selling loose cigarettes, and they killed that man for selling some damn tobacco without a license.
Obviously, far
without a license.
Story, like he had been cited repeatedly, he refused to stop.
You're gonna choke a man to death for some damn cigarettes, man.
And you know what's crazy about that is that the Trump administration got all the grief about that, but it was the Obama administration that decided not to prosecute it, right? And their decision was that it appeared that he wasn't asphyxiated to death like you're suggesting, that instead he had a heart incident while he was wrestling with the officer. And
that was exacerbated in cause from the attack.
Well, right, but who decided to fight with the police, right?
He didn't fight with them. He decided to stand his ground and not let them take advantage of him.
But you don't get to stand there when you're breaking the law, right? But here's the thing, I'm glad you brought that up. So, you don't think the police should have done anything to Eric Garner because he's a black man. But you do think that other Americans, probably not black people, just white people, should be arrested for having alcohol? Like, you can't reconcile these points.
I do think when it comes to Eric Garner, they should have did something.
So you don't
They should have wrote him a damn citation.
Okay, but they've done it in the past. They didn't stop.
But guess what? Write him another citation.
Okay, but if Whitey has alcohol,
write the man a citation.
But if Whitey has alcohol, prison.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
If Blackie or Whitey both got alcohol illegally, write him a citation.
Okay. So how about the guys that are running the alcohol? And how about the crime that
you mean the bootleggers?
Right. And how about the violent crime that comes around the alcohol?
Let me be honest with you. If they're bootleggers, I don't think they should go to prison at all. If they're bootleggers, there should be other things that should be done to penalize them, to stop them from bootlegging.
Like what?
But send them to prison, I disagree with that. You know why? Because all those bootleggers went to prison for one reason. Because there was no tax dollars being made on the bootlegging industry.
But what consequence do you think they should have? One,
it could be penalties of their credit. It could be penalties.
Criminals don't have good credit.
Wait a minute.
I mean, you know this.
Well, some do. Anyway, but it could be penalties against their credit, renewing their licenses, also getting loans, etc., things like that. There's ways to penalize them financially to make it financially unreasonable to be involved in bootlegging.
Any of that would stop the alcohol industry or the drug industry. We're going to give you back credit. You're in this great cash business.
You can penalize.
But we're not going to let you. We're going to debank you. You think that's?
You can penalize them. Yes.
So no consequences, but illegal.
Consequences, but not prison.
But rule following Americans, they can't have a drink. They can't have a smoke. You don't want no freedom.
The same way you go
all
to
because
jail.
of your 3,000-year-old, 2,000-year-old. How old is your book? 1,500-year-old book. How old is your book?
If you get a traffic ticket, you don't pay. You go to jail. You with me? You don't go to prison, but you go to jail. So I'm with sending them to jail, but not prison.
So we're back with sending people to jail. For
same way you do for a traffic ticket.
Based on your 15, 16.
The same way a poor woman get a traffic ticket for not having a tail light that she can't fix, and she can't pay that ticket. If she gets a warrant, she goes to jail for it.
Here's the thing.
It's not right, but it happens.
Actually, they're really not arresting people for traffic warrants anymore.
That's a lie.
No, there was a lot of litigation.
Absolute lie.
I know you like to pull stuff out.
Go downtown to the
no, it's something that's not, and it should have never happened, right? And I was innately involved in not letting people sit in jail when I was a judge, because I thought it was repugnant that people would sit in jail.
They used to put us in jail in high school.
But if you're going to make stuff illegal, there has to be a consequence. So you want alcohol illegal.
Charles, they came to our high school, Charles, and arrested a whole gang of us for having traffic warrants.
Right, was that?
While we were in school.
That sounds like it was 30, 40 years ago.
Yes, it was. What I'm saying.
Okay, but I'm talking about today. I know you don't like to talk about today, but let's talk about today. So because of your 1,700-year-old religious text, you want to make alcohol illegal, you want to make marijuana illegal. What else did you want to make illegal?
Prostitution.
Okay.
Should be illegal because it's legal in Vegas.
It's actually not illegal in Las Vegas County.
Well, it's legal in Nevada.
It's legal in
Nevada.
Parts of Nevada.
But the bottom line is, Charles, it appears in this nation that nothing is really illegal and immoral if the government can make a tax dollar from it. And what I'm saying is that which is immoral should remain immoral.
Well, who decides
whether you can make money from it or not?
Who decides what's immoral? The Quran?
So wait a minute. The Bible does too.
Okay, but who decides?
The Bible does too.
So when there's a
The
conflict,
principles-
when
the
there's a
principles are
conflict
the same, Charles.
between no, they're not.
Yeah,
and
they
when
are,
there's a
Charles.
conflict between
The
the
principles
Quran
are the same,
and the
Charles.
Bible, who wins? Which one
Charles,
wins? Which one wins?
Let me say this, Charles.
Which one wins?
We don't use the Bible Quran, but we use the principles that undergo it both to set up the structure of this nation.
But how about
That's
the ones
way it was
in
done
the
in the beginning.
Quran which suggest
The
that
founding fathers,
violence
same
is
thing in
okay
America.
against infidels or non-believers?
Say what?
So in the Quran, where it's very clear, I know you want to say it's not,
No,
very
speak
clear
to it. Go ahead.
that if you don't accept the faith, that it is okay to proselytize with the sword, to use violence.
That's not
to
true.
those.
That's absolute lie.
That's absolutely not
Absolute
a lie.
lie.
I get that you don't want it to be
Absolute
true,
lie.
but so
That same question was raised to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And they asked him about proselytizing with the sword. You know what he told them? He said, the ink of the scholar is more precious than the blood of the martyr.
okay, it's
So
still,
what is he saying to him?
Well-
You teach people by teaching
course
them.
you do.
You teach them with knowledge.
But there's
you teach them with
actually
education, not killing
express
them.
approval in the Quran for violence to people that don't accept. And
You're
in
wrong
fact,
about that.
In fact, we've got to
You know,
this
the
day,
Bible- you know, the Bible says the same-
infantata is being
the Bible says the
chanted
same
all over
thing.
this world
The
about
Bible
Jews.
says the same thing.
So who wins?
The Bible says the
I don't
same
just,
thing.
but it's different, right? And in
No,
fact,
it
in the
ain't.
New Testament, if you look, you're talking about the Old
Ain't
Testament
no
or the
new
New Testament?
Ain't no new old.
Yeah, there most certainly is.
God's word never
So-
gets old or new.
Okay, but
God's word remains the
but
same.
which God?
God never called it.
Which God?
The God of the Bible,
Which God?
or not Jesus, called it the New Testament.
Okay, which God?
Men did that
But which
to
God?
try to get away from the law
So,
of God.
so is it? So how about the Buddhist God or the Hindus? Do we?
They believe in the statue.
Okay. So they don't count.
No.
Okay.
They believe in the statue.
So we've got a couple of religions
So you
don't
down with the
count
statue then?
because of idolatry.
I can't roll with the statue. I'm sorry.
Okay, but
I
who
can't talk to the statue.
decides which religion
But I
wins?
will say this.
Here's the thing.
I will say this. Buddhism has principles that are very identical to Islam and Christianity.
absolutely not
The
true.
principles of
I
Buddhism.
know you love
wait.
lying,
To be a
but-
Buddhist means this. Buddhism means one who has crossed over from darkness into light and in search of enlightenment. That is the principles of Christianity and Islam.
Okay.
To search for enlightenment.
Absolutely. I love how you like to make up stuff. But here, then we've decided.
No, to be a
you gotta
Buddhist
let me
means
finish a
one in
damn
search of
sentence?
enlightenment, Charles. That's a fact,
Okay,
Charles.
so now we've recognized two religions that you don't think should set the tone in America. But how about this? How about this idea?
Mm-hmm.
How about we have foundational documents that evolved over time, right? To be far more inclusive of women and people of color, right? That exist today
That
in
were
America.
inspired by Christian principles.
That exist. Actually, most of the founding fathers were something called deists, which was popular at the time and rejected a lot of the form and format of Christian organized religion. And
Well, that
more
was all white
accepting-
folks, though,
right?
Charles.
I get it. Oh,
That was
damn,
all white folks.
Evil whitey. But
Who
here's
talked
the
the
thing.
religion but
so
didn't
we
practice
have
it.
these documents that control how things work in America. And why don't our politicians, those greedy bastards that are in Washington and the ones in Austin, why don't we expect them to serve the American people and not their religion, and serve the American people and not themselves, and abide by our foundational documents and the amendments thereof, instead of
Charles,
your
they
Quran
can't
or
do that.
my Bible or anything
Those
else?
politicians
let's
can't do that.
put America actually
No,
first.
Those politicians can't do that because their religion is not their God. Their God is money.
Okay. In response to Governor Abbott's refusal to remove the barbed wire and stand down to federal government troops and federal border patrol by trying to secure the Texas border that has been abandoned by Mayorkas and the Biden administration, Joe Biden, the President of these United States, has declared an economic war against the state of Texas. He is saying that he is refusing to approve new permits for liquefied natural gas terminals in Texas until we have bent the knee to the government. It's a bit crazy because also much of that liquefied natural gas has been promised to Europe in response to Russian sanctions, and of course, who knows who blew up that pipeline, right? It is a crazy decision, but who's going to suffer? Europeans are going to suffer. Texans are going to suffer. As Texans bear the brunt of the unsecured border, this is more craziness from the Biden
But Charles,
administration.
I'm not more concerned about European suffering than American suffering. Will that make us suffer? That's not going to make us suffer. My concern is for the first time since the Civil War, a sitting president has put economic sanctions on a state within the Union. And last time this happened, it led to a civil war. That barbed wire to me is inhumane. But to allow the federal agents to go and assist those who are across the border from drowning, not let them in, but stop them from drowning like the mother and children drowned, I'm for that. But we do have a border problem. But my concern, there's 25 states that are supporting Texas by sending National Guards to help fight that border. There was 25 states who fought to secede from the Union. It's happening all over again. History is repeating itself. And if we're not careful, we better be very careful in Texas and in the South that we don't lead to another civil war with these economic sanctions. Because you said
I'm not
an economic war.
I'm not shocked that you'd find thousands of Texans losing their jobs where they get up off their ass every day and go to work is not Texans suffering. It's not Texas suffering, because you don't seem to ever care about the people of all races who get up off their ass and go to work.
To Europe,
right?
Texas lose jobs like that. That's a lie.
He is shutting down
Europe is not the
construction
only
jobs.
recipient of that gas.
You don't understand basic economics because you don't give a damn about people that get up and work every day.
What I don't want to see is an internal civil war between Texas and other southern states with the Union over economic sanctions.
Do you find the barbed wire between Egypt and the West Bank and Palestine, do you find that to be inhumane? How about the barbed wire between Canada and the United States? How about the barbed wire between Mexico and Guatemala? It's only the American barbed wire that you have a problem
in the water like that when women and children are drowning and no one helps them. That's inhumane.
I don't think we should let women or children drown.
But that's exactly what we're doing, Charles.
Water?
That's
because
what we did.
Of fixing our immigration, allowing poor people that are law-abiding to legally come over here, instead we have this horrible process.
We are headed
the only way you
for
can
a
immigrate.
civil war. And your ancestors came illegally.
Okay. First of all,
maybe the Indians should put some barbed wire down for them.
How every argument
maybe
has
some
to be about
wire
200 years ago.
I guess your ancestors
what I don't
might have
want
been
to
a good thing to do.
Is I don't want
and
to have an
their
open
kids
border.
Died, you wouldn't feel
I don't
that
want
way.
Texans losing their jobs.
You don't give a damn about Texans losing their jobs. You care about
I want people to be lawfully able to immigrate
and stop them by any means necessary.
You're just full of crap, and you just want to talk about race and talk about
we are headed toward a civil war, and I'm afraid that's what's coming.